Welcome to the Awakening Shalom podcast. The Awakening Shalom podcast is an opportunity for digital faith formation at Myers Park Baptist Church that accompanies the Awakening series, a year-long journey of exploration and discernment which invites all people to come learn about the current social justice issues of the day and how they impact our faith. What we are awakening to is Shalom, the Hebrew word for the peace and beauty that exists when we are living in right relationship with God, ourselves, other human beings, and all created things.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Awakening Shalom podcast series entitled Hupomoné. We are here really taking a deep dive into this word that is often translated into patient endurance or into perseverance, into patience. We're really looking at what it means to be perseverant in this time of both a pandemic, but also political upheaval, a lot of uprisings, a crisis, overall global and national crises. So we're looking at that right now, especially as we start to realize that our fall is going to look a lot different than we have planned. I know there was a lot of hope that we would be over this hump and June and July would come in here and we'd be back to some sort of normal, but it's looking like we're in this for the long haul, as was predicted in the earlier days. And so we are excited to talk to you a little bit more about what patient endurance looks like. We are here. I am Mia McClain. I'm here with Reverend Dr. Benjamin Boswell.
Hello.
And our special guest for the day, Dr. Anita Blanchard. Dr. Blanchard, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I appreciate it.
Of course, of course. I love what you always say about not being that Anita Blanchard. So if anybody is confused, she is not the best friend of Michelle Obama, but she, according to her, her blog, Dr. Anita Blanchard is an associate professor of psychological and organization science at UNC Charlotte. Dr. Blanchard's research interests include people identify online and face-to-face groups and communities and the individual group and organizational outcomes of belonging to these groups and communities. That was a lot. That was a mouthful.
Yeah.
Talk more about that as you introduce yourself. Tell us about yourself and your connection to our wonderful family here at Myers Park Baptist Church.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I also want to just go back and say that on Twitter, Air Force One followed me when I know they thought I was the other Dr. Anita Blanchard. I was like, why would Air Force One be following me on Twitter? It makes no sense, just out of the blue. So it was the closest I ever got to Barack and Michelle. Anyway, so yes, I am Dr. Anita Blanchard at the university. I study online groups. I really started studying online technology in the 90s, and I have it's moved from virtual communities to face-to-face and online groups, and I'm really interested professionally on the individual functioning within that, the positive effects that come out of being in a group, how groups form and maintain themselves, and how they affect organizations, and how they affect communities. And I'm a member at Myers Park Baptist Church. I please remind me when I need to talk about my Baptist church bits and my family bits and my research, because even though I say that I go across all my boundaries, I really do keep them separate in my head. And I know that I do. I mean, that's actually psychologically, we keep parts separate in my head. So those are all different. And it is funny, it is pretty interesting being a psychology professor in a religious organization, because I'm always analyzing. I rarely am, I'm always looking at a different level, a meta level of, that's this theory, or that's theory, or that can understand this way. Even when I'm getting a lot of spiritual nourishment, Ben, I'm still going, well, psychology says. So, yeah. So, yeah, that's it.
Go
ahead.
I was just going to say academics are dangerous in church settings. As my mom is an academic, also taught at UNC Charlotte for many years. And she's always been seen in a lot of ways. I don't think this is the way it works at our church, but seen as kind of like an odd person in the context, in the religious context, as somebody who's like overeducated. Usually more education than the clergy is a strange place to be in a religious setting. And so she's always wrestled with that. Sometimes, very rarely were her gifts as a professional ever affirmed, in church settings. So I just find it fascinating to be an academic in a church setting. It must be odd.
Yeah, it's both liberating and odd to feel and to believe without a survey, an experimental test about it, right?
But even at Myers Park Baptist, do you find it? I mean, I could probably assume that at our church is a little less odd than other places. We have so many educated folk and other professors, other UNCC deans, professors in our actual congregation.
Absolutely. At our church, there's tons of professors. There's quite a few from other universities around here. And what I have enjoyed in talking with folks when we were discussing things, I'll share a psychological theory, and people get really excited to hear my interpretation of that or how I use that to interpret what we're talking about. So I actually found it to be never a disconnect between science or social science and our faith and our theology. It's much more used to enrich how we talk about it. So that's been good. That's why I like it.
And you've also been, in all full disclosure, the author of a number of surveys that we have created, or at least a consultant on a number of surveys.
Yes, it's hard for me to not edit something when I see it. So if I see something that I know I can make a contribution to, I'm like, oh, wait, I can make that better.
Yeah.
That's great.
Churches are notorious for creating bad surveys, I think,
Everybody is. Everybody. It's a whole thing. That's why we have whole classes on it, because anybody can make a survey, and they're usually, they can easily be bad. Yes.
Right.
Interesting.
And then surveys are like one of those things that people come up with in group settings, and they're like, you know what we should do? We just don't have the answer to this. Let's do a survey. And I'm always like, because they usually don't give you the information that you need unless they're written very carefully, and what you get is a bunch of unhelpful information that doesn't help you make any decision that you didn't already have beforehand. And you've wasted a lot of time.
Yeah. And if you don't make actions after the survey, you've done more damage than you could have, but just not doing a survey at all. You really have to take action after you've collected data, because otherwise it looks you're wasting you're wasting a valuable contract and trust from the folks filling it out.
That's so true, man.
Wow. I never knew there was, I knew there was psychology behind surveys, but I never really, I didn't think people had their life's work wrapped up in that.
Right.
That's great. So speaking of life's work, tell us about your life's work prior to the pandemic, sort of what your day-to-day looked like as a parent, professor, and parishioner, if you want to combine or bring it all together. Let us know.
Yeah, it does overlap, because certainly our family is very involved in the church, from the children on up to us. So, day-to-day life does revolve around the church. For a long time, our bus stop was at the church. So I was there every single day, morning and night. So pre-pandemic, we would get up 5 a.m., maybe exercise, get Connor out to school. Yeah, really early. Connor would leave school for the bus at 6:15, 6:20. The twins would get out the door at 7 a.m. Dave and I would work like crazy, and then they'd start coming back home. And I worked. I worked at home a lot, because I could do a lot of writing there, a lot of my research. Going to campus, take the train in, which is about an hour each way, which was I realize now, a lot of time. And would, as soon as the kids got home, we'd start running and taking them to all their events, all their things at church, all their things for sports, for additional activities. It honestly, I think we would have Friday night off. That would be the only night that we weren't running around. And And also, I don't know if you guys know this, that I was in Berlin the week before everything closed down here.
I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very scary. I was talking to one of my students. We were the last of the world travelers. I mean, the next week everybody was called home. We got in right under, I think we got in on Sunday, and on Wednesday they were bringing everybody back. Yeah. So I haven't been, and when we came home, we knew what was happening in Berlin. I self-quarantined. I told my students to self-quarantine. We finally got permission from the university at 5:00 on Monday to self-quarantine. But it was, it's been a while. It's been a little longer to be a little different.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So the transition now into online learning completely, because
Right.
this is your area, I'm curious about with children, getting them online, but also getting your students online, and then sort of observing from your areas of expertise what this has been like for you and your family and then others.
I was really shocked at how difficult it was for me to take my graduate class online. I've been teaching online lecture classes, and I say that with finger quotes if you're listening, lecture classes, because I would, that's a bigger class. Even, it's more performative when I go in and they do a lot of work and we have discussions and activities. But that was really easy to move online. It was awful the first couple of weeks we were trying to have graduate classes I would start with my work parts first. It was awful. I couldn't get feedback from them. I couldn't figure out how I could see everybody. We've learned a lot. It was surprising to me to how hard it was for me, since I have been honestly using email since 1984. Okay. I have been online before you were born, both of you. Yes.
Ben's a little old.
I was alive, but not that long. Yeah, no, I hear you.
So it was shocking. It was shocking to me. I thought I would have it a lot easier being a parent, putting my kids online. I'm a professor. How hard is it to get fourth graders to do their math? It was awful. It was really a challenge. And, and I just, talk about privilege. A lot of this has been, I'm a professor doing this. I'm home all the time. Right. What is everybody else doing? How are they struggling? When I can work at home and I know how online classes work, what the heck is everybody else doing? No, it was really tough. It was really tough getting them, because also, a lot of fourth grade teachers in freshman high school don't have a lot of experience teaching online. They don't want to. They've been face-to-face forever. It was such a struggle for them. And I saw them, and I would even sometimes go, hey, you might want to try this. This might be a better idea, just because, I've tried it. It helps me. But it was a struggle for them too. Although I have to be honest, our the twins are at the Language Academy, and their fourth grade teacher is a former pathologist from Egypt. She was able to kind of make that transition pretty quickly. She was really good. She was amazing. I loved her. Love her.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah, but it was tough. Yeah.
That's a lot of grace that I think those of our listeners who are also parents who struggled homeschooling, I hope are feeling grace knowing that someone who's been online since '84 and who studies online learning and who's taught online and who has a doctorate degree who's also struggling through that. I think that's because there was a deep solidarity I think we felt at that. It's still the same kind of thing we all hear, in the same boat, but not in the same storm, not in the same boat, whatever that analogy is. So a lot of people who don't have access to online technology at all, who were not doing any classes, who were falling behind and falling through the cracks. But even the parents who had the technology, and even the parents with educational privilege, and even the parents with experience with it, were still struggling. And now we're talking about, the rumors are that we might be going back to school 2 days a week or 3 days on and 2 days off. And what's that going to do to working parents? Where's your anxiety at with that right now? How are you thinking about the fall?
I so know my privilege with this. And I have been called out by some good friends about my privilege of this, and I appreciate what they've said. I am teaching one night class this fall, so I will be home whenever the students need me. And our university is being incredibly progressive compared to all the other universities in the UNC system, where faculty got to choose whether they taught online or face-to-face. I'm teaching a grad class at night, spread into a huge room. We're all going to be wearing masks. I'm not worried for my working, but so many other people, I don't know. How do you handle 2 days at school and 2 days the rest of the time off? I don't know how that works, especially if you don't have the capacity. I do want to say to the folks out there who are listening with younger children, it is so much easier when they're older. So much easier, so much easier. My colleagues who have infants, toddlers, not even in kindergarten, all the way up to the 3rd grade, they are struggling. It is so much harder. It is truly easier with older children. Even though it's not great, it is so much, the young parents, I don't know how they're doing it. It's got to be awful, especially if you don't have the options to work at home. I don't know. But I mean, the other thing too is my twins have respiratory issues. I don't know if the school opens up full time, if I'd send them back. I don't want to homeschool, but I have the option to homeschool. I do not want to homeschool. I really, really do not.
It's amazing to hear you say that, because we had one of those social gatherings at the church, 10 or less, in the parking lot. We just started doing those, and the conversation moved to this very question, and 2 or 3 parents were saying that they're considering homeschooling for the first time in their life. And it's amazing how many parents who were just opposed to the idea, of course, and for many reasons, right? Socialization, support of public school education, all kinds of good things. Now, just because of health reasons, because of the way the learning is going to go, lots of parents are choosing private options that are not doing things the way the public option is doing. This is going to impact public education in a way that we really just don't understand yet.
Mm-hmm. And I want to be as supportive as possible for the public schools. I want to make sure that I hope we do a hybrid or online, and the teachers get up to speed. That's what I want. I don't think we can possibly do full time. I don't know how. I don't honestly know how we're going to do hybrid. I don't see how kids are going to be safe or not bring it back.
Especially if you have multiple children. I'm just thinking about those parents who are having to juggle between multiple schools, right? So like if you have 2 children and one goes to school on Tuesday and Thursday and the other one goes on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I mean, how is this? This is not feasible for people who don't have support or who have multiple children.
Right. It's not at all.
Yeah. So I'm curious, I'm not sure any of your research with this. The pandemic has exposed this disparity in our educational system across everything, health, education, beyond, but particularly with regard to public education or learning. Does any of your research with the Vice Lab, if you want to tell people, does any of your research look at incorporate cultural studies into your psychology or into your organizational studies?
Right. So VICE, which I love that my students came up with that idea because they're very creative, stands for Virtual Identity, Community, and Intitativity. Intitativity is a fancy word for group, or the feeling of being in a group. We have not, it's funny, no, we have not incorporated the digital divide, although that's been on my, beside my research, it's always the digital divide. We have not incorporated a lot of cultural issues, diversity, although I have 2, ironically, white male students who are studying the positive effects of groupiness, that intitativity, on mitigating some of the negative effects of biases and bigotry. Actually, I have 3 students. I have a more senior PhD student who's looking at that. So I do not have that in my research repertoire. I do know that it is highlighted by the pandemic that we need internet. I know that the university is not. We're at the UNC Charlotte. Most of our many of our students are first generation college students. Many of our students come from rural backgrounds. We are working to provide, if they can't afford it, laptops for every student so that they have the access. We are also working to make sure we have hotspots. And I'm going to throw out that I've learned about providing hotspots by the university for internet from CMS in some of the discussions I was having among those folks. So this was one thing you're like, oh, that's a great idea. We're going to work on it. So that's kind of the melding of what I have on the digital divide. But it's true. I'm not sure. Charlotte has options and opportunities, but some of the rural areas in North Carolina simply do not. And it's a real challenge to how they're going to be safe and educated this fall.
Yeah, some of these students are getting issued a Chromebook when they start are going to have to start taking that Chromebook home with them after school, and then that's going to cause all kinds of other problems. So we're going to, it's just the training around how to use technology, how to keep technology safe, how to take care of it, all that stuff is going to change.
So the twins brought home, we didn't have computers for them because we thought that was not appropriate. So the twins actually brought home their Chromebooks, and that became a real challenge because everybody was setting up Zoom meetings, but I can't email them from my UNC, from any account. And they can't email me. The most we can do is, oh my gosh, I say this? We trick the system. So we share a Google Doc and put information in there. And that's how, they'll share a Google Doc with me. I'll edit it and then they can have the information. So we've actually gone out and bought some refurbished cheap Chromebooks so I can send them an email and say, listen, church choir is this time, go to that meeting. Your opera is this time, go to that meeting. But that again is privilege that we had, a few $100s to do that. But coming back, it's really, it's great that CMS is giving folks the Chromebooks, but we can't use them like we need to at home.
These are the kind of little logistics they're going to have to overcome. Yeah.
I didn't realize that with a Chromebook. So what's the issue with the Chromebook? You can't send emails?
The CMS Chromebooks they've shut them down, rightfully. So kids aren't on there doing Facebook during school. They have their own Chromebooks at school. So absolutely, we don't want strangers being able to email my children. I don't want that.
Got it.
Yes. But I can't email my children. And I can't send meetings to them. So in addition to running my own, this is crazy, but instead of running my own calendar, I have to run their calendars and go set them up on meetings and make sure they're having this special meeting with a teacher. And it's really, micromanaging, 4 people's lives, mine, my 3 children. Yeah.
Yes. So I wonder, this makes me feel like we're already starting to touch at this question. One of the questions we've been asking folks on this series is, what have we learned about ourselves and about technology? We might talk about that. What have we learned about technology? What have we learned about human behavior, humanity in general? And one of the ways we're kind of thinking about this, the second part of that question is, what should we keep and what should we go back to doing that we were doing before? So we're calling this interruption disruption. If it's an interruption, we're going to go back to it and probably do it similar. But if it's a disruption, it was probably something we needed to do anyway, and we're going to change it. So we're thinking about that strategically as a church. If there's a disruption and we were going to change it down the road anyway, we're going to just go ahead and make the change now and let COVID do the work that it would have taken us 2 or 3 years to do. But if it's an interruption, thinking about how we go back or meld 2 things into each other, technology plus in-person. So kind of 2 parts for this. What have we learned? And then, what's the future look like? What do we keep and what do we go back to?
So some of the things that are really kind of coming up to me, and this is the research part. I can talk about personal if you want, but I think the research is actually more interesting. Is I've been studying online groups, and for me, it's the world because I've been online for forever. But now the world's actually caught up. The world is using video conferencing. It is commonplace now to have this conversation which we would not have done before. And so 2 things emerged for me that are really important for you to think about for the church. 1, humans have a need for belonging. It is a psychological need for belonging that is as important for psychological social health as eating is for biological health. Okay, we must belong. We must belong. That's why when we all got isolated, everybody who hated technology hopped online and started talking to each other. Okay, that's why we did it. It's been there forever. We had the option. We didn't do it until we had to have that need met. So that need for belonging to a group. Okay, so the group part is the important part. And that's the interdictivity part of my research. It's basically that what makes a group feel like a group. And what I have learned from this is not only, we know what makes people feel like they're in a group. They are interactive. They feel similar to each other. Ironically, though, we're finding people usually think about similarity of values and similarity of characteristics. What we now see from the research, it's similarity of goals, that we share a goal with each other. That's really important. That actually has a stronger effect than many of the other similarity things we've seen. And we're looking at perceptions of characteristics and values. And now my research wants to move over to, let's look at some demographic similarity and diversity and see how that affects this interdictivity feeling, or if interdictivity can, mitigate some of these issues. But the other part that my lab, I love this. I've been studying interdictivity for forever, okay? Forever. We've been studying online interdictivity forever. We had our first lab meeting and everybody was like, oh my God, this feels so different and similar. I mean, they don't talk like a Valley girl, but I do. This feels very similar and different to what we've been doing. And we realized that it wasn't just seeing other people, it was being seen. One of the students couldn't connect. He only could, his video wouldn't work. And he's like, I feel left out of this group. And one of my master's students has studied something called co-presence is what it is. And we realized, first meeting, people need to be seen. It's not just that I see you, but that I'm seen, that's really important to belong in the group. So that's a really different way of thinking.
That is really something powerful you brought up, because I was in this this conference, I'm in this cohort with Duke leadership, and we had this conference in April that was supposed to be in person, but ended up being all online. There was one person in Texas who could never get her video to work because she had terrible internet. So she couldn't get the video and the audio to work. So we only really saw her picture, like, at the beginning of this, you saw my picture. And there is a sense of like, we missed her. Like she saw us. But there was also this sense of like, she was there, but not there. And I had never really taken the time to sit with that and process that. And we've been doing this Zoom thing now for 3 months, or whatever the platform is. We've been doing it for 3 months now. And I'm now realizing the importance of actually seeing people's faces as opposed to the phone.
Yeah, it's I've got some research I've submitted where we're going to test the 3 parts of this: the me seeing other people seeing me, and me seeing other people see each other, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, it's especially in large crowds like a church, that perhaps I don't want to be seen. I want to be in the back, but seeing other people see each other and interact with each other can actually be positive for me too. It can increase my feelings of connection. But in small groups like this, I think people need to be seen as well as see other people.
Wow.
Yeah. So what about physical presence? Obviously a couple things on that. Like, I think first of all, seeing ourselves, we've learned, is also exhausting. So seeing other people see ourselves and seeing what we look like when we're in a meeting, exhausting emotional experience, right? So there's that. And then also, like, as an extrovert, I always say, like, Zoom meetings don't do for me what a regular meeting does. And meetings, I had this joke about meetings, that when I gave my life to Jesus, I didn't know he was going to take it one meeting at a time. But actually, I get a lot of energy from meetings. I get a lot of energy from people. And so I can leave like a big group gathering or a meeting and be like on an emotional high. where other people are like needing to curl up in the fetal position and hide in the closet. And even if the meeting was like intense and angry and people yelled at me, I'm still like, yes, where's the party? So I don't get any of that from Zoom. Like I almost get almost none of that from Zoom. I get a sense of connection and belonging and productivity, and we're making progress and we're doing stuff. And I see you and there's a little like, oh, there they are. Mm-hmm. But I don't get any of the physical emotion juice that being in physical presence with other people comes from. So I know that helps the introvert folks, right? Like they love that, but it doesn't help me. So I wonder, like, what is it doing to us physically? And do we need, and how will we now curate and decide what are the times we have to be together and what are the times we don't have to be together?
All right, so I have a lot of thoughts based on research and what you said. First of all, I think that online meetings are so difficult because we have to focus so hard on this. I think that is actually in a larger, we're focusing, I look around my room, which I'm just looking around here. I could sit here and you could be there and I won't have to focus so much. I can see you, it's all part of that. But this, I'm really putting myself to believing you're right there. I mean, it's funny because I always point to my screen and I still don't understand my students can't see it. I'm like, look, it's right there. So part of it is the focus that it requires to be here. Second, we don't know why video isn't the same as face-to-face. Theoretically, it should be based on what we know from communication theory. Okay, I think my future research is going to start comparing cognitively that there is we're smelling more when we're around people. We are exchanging energies more. I mean, there's something else, three-dimensional. And I'm like, what could, one thing I hate to say smell, but what is the difference besides the depth of perception and smell that we're getting face to face? I think that must be part of it too. Okay, that we get is so much better face to face and online. Third, I have real concerns about people's ability currently to stay 6 feet apart. And it comes back to my research on entitativity and groupiness, that feeling of group. The original researcher in 1958, they didn't have online communications. He just looked at people and he could say, he argued that physical proximity made us think that people were groups, okay? 6 feet is too far apart. 6 feet is too far apart. I knowing what I know, trying to be a good social distancer, I'm around somebody, I want to touch them. I want to touch them and be closer. And it is really, I don't think it's going to be natural for us to be close, to stay 6 feet apart. I don't think our brains are wired to see that as a group, and it goes back to that need for belonging and to belong to a group. So those things.
So basically, you're telling us that our hangouts are not
outside. Outside is fine. I believe the dispersion is fine. And it's the inside that makes me anxious. Well, the
inside is super anxious. Yes, even inside with a mask, I think people are not going to be able to social distance totally.
No,
the mask is critical. That's why the mask is so critical, right? Is because that's the one factor that we can control. Even if somebody else doesn't control themselves, we can control it, right? And so you might not be able to control 6 feet in a grocery store. Somebody could just walk up to you and grab you. You can't do it. It's just, even if you're outside, but you can control if you have a mask on. This is why that's why we're all posting articles about masks constantly, because it's the one factor that makes the biggest difference that we can all actually control. But to your point, like, I could tell you now, having been through this COVID, of all the times that I've kind of put myself out there a little, hoping that people would social distance because of some event in my life or something as my role as a pastor that I thought we needed to do, and been immediately compromised by someone's inability to stay 6 feet away from either me or somebody I'm with. And even less than a few days ago, and I think, so it's just human, right? Like, I'm not mad at them.
Yeah.
You know, like when somebody kind of slowly came toward me and hugged me in the middle of a time of pandemic, I'm not mad at them. I get where they came from. I wish they maybe had a little bit more restraint, but this happens. I think what you're saying is that we're trying to overcome a deep biological need for touch in a way that and it's like a lot of things, it's like a lot of human things where we think we're stronger than we are, right? It's like with marketing. We think we can resist marketing, that nobody's teaching us anything or changing our habits. You know, they don't pay marketers millions and millions of dollars because they don't know how to change your habits. That's what they learn how to do. They know how to change you. They know how to get you to shop. They know how to make you feel bad about yourself so you'll buy something. This is why psychologists sometimes go into marketing and philosophers go into marketing. It's because it's profitable and they know how to manipulate your behavior. And we just think, no, nobody can control me. Nobody can mess with me. You know, and it's the same with this. Like, we think we could actually stay 6 feet apart. Like, we're somehow so in charge of ourselves that we can keep ourselves from doing it, but we can't. Most of us just can't do it.
We honestly can't. It's not natural. It would take probably 2 years of us being unable to touch other people before we would be able to go out and do this. So thinking about when this is over, so your advice on what people, all right, so I need to preface this, like, I'm horrible at predicting the future, okay? So, like, what people are gonna do. But I mean, you know, as I said, I've already gotten my, you know, geek credentials done, but here's where I made the mistake. When the web started, when the internet started, and people started being able to have web pages, I'm like, who will ever use that? We've already got email. We've already got file transfer protocol and Gopher, neither of which you've ever heard of, okay? I'm like, why? I mean, those just died, like, within months. They were like the ways we shared information. So, yeah, I'm not going to say what we know. I think for me, I would like to be able to, I think we're going to make calculations. I was thinking about this earlier. We're going to make calculations on what am I willing to travel for, and so I can get the needs I have met. I mean, that need for belonging is just going to be there, right? So we're going to need to be around people. We want to be around people. So when this is all over, honestly, I'm going to go back. I really don't know. It depends on if it's over by December of 2020 or if it's over in 2022, right? I just don't. The good news is, we will make technology do what we need it to do.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The morning panel I was on, a man from the head of Google in the Middle East was saying, we are innovating like crazy. That pace has not stopped. The difference is we are adopting like crazy. And we know from the theories of technology and humans that we make the technology do what we want it to do. They may have ideas, they may say, oh, this is great, but we make it do what we want to do. So we're going to make it as much as possible, let us belong, let us be in groups, let us function and be psychologically and physically healthy, I think. That's my prediction. That's it. That's all I got for that. What we're going to keep doing.
That's great. That's great to hear. I mean, not that I didn't know that people were out there working really hard, but I've been thinking a lot about, I mean, you were just talking about how, email, you've been emailing since 84, and it probably was a piece of garbage back then. I mean, when I started emailing back in 90 something, right? It was like AOL messaging forever to get to the person to get it to. And like, things have definitely improved over the past, 25 years since I've been emailing or whatever. So I'm thinking deeply about like this platform and these video conferencing platforms and the glitches that we're experiencing and how they're probably innovating for us to be able to do some of the things we need to do that we haven't been able to do well on like a Zoom.
Yeah.
Like one of the things we haven't done well in Zoom is like the sound is not great. And one of the things about like the digital space is that we can't really read body language. So like you'll cut somebody off and you don't really mean to. Different like group dynamic things we can't do via Zoom, which gives me anxiety sometimes, which is why I prefer small groups on Zoom. But I'm hoping that the technology will get to a place where we can manage our group dynamics better on Zoom. We can manage sound better, manage live conversations better. So it's hopeful to hear that people are really innovating for what we need in this moment.
So two things. I know that Zoom is changing. We were doing something in my lab. I needed it to, I'm like, oh, I need them to do this. The next week it did it. I'm like, well, all right then. That's good. Yeah. I also think, we've only been, I've been online. We've only been doing this for a few months. Okay. And look how much better we've gotten at it. I don't want us to be experts, but if we have to be, the technology will make sure we stop interrupting each other. Our human rules of behavior will help us so that we can read and not interrupt each other. I think it's, we make it. The research always shows we make the technology do what we want it to do within the constraints that it gives us, and they're trying to change those constraints to take us to our needs. So yeah.
That's really helpful. So one of the things I've noticed about church meetings by Zoom, and we've done a different variety. We have lots of staff meetings every week. We have lots of meetings with lay groups. Is debate seems to be less intense. And our church, we love controversy and debate. And it's without the body language for some reason where you can kind of see someone get agitated and get a little red in the face, and you can almost feel you don't really feel that over Zoom. So I've noticed that I don't see people getting as irritated either with what I say, or I find myself getting as irritated with them. I gotta pop in. So I think there's this for whatever reason, again, the physical thing makes debate different. I think our debates as staff meetings, which tend to be filled with lots of debate too, senior staff, those are less intense for whatever reason. And deacons meetings are totally different. They are not even close to the same, although we were already changing and evolving as a church. But we went from the old model to the new model to the COVID model in less than 6 months. And now it's it doesn't even feel like the same organization. Right. It feels like we're in another totally different organization because the debates and the conversations are so different. I think some of that has been good though. It's made things seem that it used to be little things could seem really big, but now it just doesn't seem like people have patience for letting little things get big anymore. On the other hand, I wonder down the road if there's something really important that we do need to get into it with and really lay it on the line. Are we going to be able to do that by Zoom? Will we really be able to debate and argue the way we need to over something deeply controversial, certain kinds of security on campus, one of the early decisions we made this year? How will we do that, if we can't be present? So that's one thing I'm just wondering about. Are we going to get better at that?
So do you allow chats during your meetings where people can respond? Yeah. Okay, because I'll be honest with you, in the faculty meetings I'm on, the chat is where some of the dissension tends to bubble up. People will say all sorts of things on their chat to the whole group, and to each other that seem to be ripe for debate and dissension. The faculty don't really hold back either if they have an opinion on something. So, so that's one interesting. The other thing that makes me I would, if you really are concerned about it, make sure people have the ability to chat, or even, I don't think our church has to worry about anonymous dissension, right? I don't think that's a problem. But that may be a place where developing norms, I guess faculty in meetings are also always texting each other behind the scenes. So maybe that just is easier for us to take that to a Zoom meeting and start chatting negative things. But there's also two things you say. Lots of research, and this goes against the theory we would expect that online I know it's true through email, but apparently it's true through video too, that we have a little social distance between us, and that makes it less stressful to see all the reactions, all the nonverbals of people like getting anxious and stuff. I think you're right. I think it's the nonverbals. You can't see everybody going at one time or whatever it is. Also, here's something that even if you could, here could be the problem. There's some emerging research showing that we change how we react based on the physical location of somebody. So if you were all in my house and we were still doing this online, I could react differently than knowing that you're on your own houses. That even in our brains, we store your location different, and it takes it a little less. It makes it a little less emotional and responsive from that.
Wow.
That's some research I reviewed for a journal called Organization Science, which blew my mind.
Clearly. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
The idea that we have a sense of, because that would also, like your sense of safety or fight or flight would be being triggered based on. Wow. Man.
Okay, so this is interesting. This may lead us into, we're getting towards the end here, but I'm curious about spirituality in this thing, in conversation. So if we're storing different spaces differently, or our perception of those spaces, what has it been like for you personally, but what is it like for the human mind to be going to church in their living room or in wherever they are, right? Like, what is happening in our minds right now? Because right now, of course it feels different. I think most of us agree it feels different. I'm personally feeling less anxious because there isn't that fight or flight thing that Ben is talking about, because church space has become very dangerous space over the past years. So there's like a sniper in the balcony anymore because I'm in my living room. But like, what is happening to us now that we are attending these things in our homes, sitting in the kitchen, psychologically having meetings in our bedrooms? What's going on with us right now? And with you personally?
Oh yeah, with me. So a couple of things. I love having a cup of coffee in my pajamas and watching church or being part of church. I absolutely love that. It is part of what I look forward to on Sunday mornings. I do. I just love it. I get the spiritual. I miss the community, but I get the spiritual food I need, and I do share with my. I love the moving around to different people participating, because it's part of the community being shown to me that I do love. So I guess one question would be is disentangling, which I'm not a theologian, but disentangling community from the theology and the spirituality, right? That's the part we don't want to do that. I think part of a church is that it's a spiritual community. So I don't know. I haven't thought about that. This would be interesting to look at. I do note that certain cues, because I'm always meta-analyzing everything. I like to see how many people are watching with me. I like to see how many people saw the last one. It's only the one platform I'm watching it on, but it does make it just I'm with 150 other people, and we're all sitting here in our pajamas having coffee. I like that part. I think that is part of the community parts. And for me, the spirituality parts I've been working on are meditation, doing some meditation from Dana's book.
Dana Trent,
Yes. Yeah, I've been using her book and doing my meditations. I love that. So that's very for me, that's God and me in that situation, I feel like. Also, I make masks, and I forgot to make your mask. Oh my gosh.
I have enough now. I have 6. So.
Okay. I was like, wait a minute. It was right at the end. I just come to a new thing, and then I know that it started getting hot, so I started gardening. That's part of my thing. But making masks has helped. But I don't know how it's going to affect the church.
Gardening is a spiritual activity, so that you're doing that. Yeah, it's totally spiritual. Yeah.
I love those things are not chores to me. Making masks, doing gardening are not chores. They're blessings. They're things I really, really treasure. So I don't know. We've got to do research on this. Right.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. One of the things I think we're learning on this is that our sense of community and our sense of theology or spirituality were not as intrinsic as we imagined they were, I think. So for some people they were, but I think for others they weren't as intrinsic. Or I guess maybe another way I'd put that is, and I think Mia has experienced this and shown this to us in a couple of ways, is that our sense of what is sacred versus what is not sacred is changing. We all kind of knew everything could be sacred, doing the laundry, cooking. We were told it could all be sacred, but then we were shut inside with our families for a while. We had to figure out how to make it sacred or we were going to die, emotionally. And so I think now, while there's what we're holding, I think is the both like the sacred space of church that is like an indigenous burial site for us that cannot be disturbed and is so sacred that it has to be preserved in its perfect original form. And the creation of new sacred spaces like our living room couch with that cup of coffee that you're talking about are happening at the same time. And so I think it's like our vision of what's holy is expanding. And sometimes that will mean that it'll migrate. Eventually that means it may migrate away from buildings and into a more expansive view of spirituality, that buildings are not as important to that. But it also could just be a kind of combination as we go forward, where there's times when we need the building and all that, and then there's most other times where we don't. And I think we're in an evolutionary period related to that. I hear people say the same thing you say, and they don't know how to describe it as sacred like you sort of did, which is like, I just want to be home on my couch. I'm loving this. I love this. How did I know that I didn't even know that I would love this so much more than going to the building. I'm not sure I ever want to go back again. And I'm not hearing that from like just young people, but old people. Yeah.
I think it gives me options, right? I still think the being with a crowd in a group, listening and singing and performing rituals it's really important psychologically too, and sociologically. I think that is very important, and that gives me deep spiritual food. On the other hand, sometimes when that's hard to do, I can grab my coffee, participate online, and still get some the spiritual needs met for that way too. I don't think we'll ever go to just completely online. That would make me very sad.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not enough. As you mentioned before, there are things missing, and there's a human need to belong even in the same space.
Oh yes, very important.
Like there's a way that we're having this conversation, and then part of it's like, what's going on in the background with Dan, or like what's going on in the background with Anita, and like if we were all able,
Christopher was trying to poke his head over.
Right, my mind wouldn't be doing that wondering, right? The wondering and wandering that's happening via this platform. So I think we do need to be back together again.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm wondering what I think is, you mentioned the hybrid school option, but I'm wondering if the future is going to be some kind of hybrid where I've been trying to challenge the deacons to think, what if we did every other month in person and the other month we did totally by Zoom? And we're always going to have an online call-in option for meetings from now on. I mean, I think that's critical. Oh, yeah. But like we have people who live in Indian land and who live in University area and Concord, Fort Mill, and some of them are deacons. How are they going to possibly be at a 6:30 p.m. meeting at the church every month? That is just completely crazy in the new world that we live in. And so it's an accessibility and power conversation. Who's got the power, and how do we not give more power to those who are more proximate, which of course in our setting privileges those in Myers Park, right? So we have to be careful about that, or we'll never really be able to be the kind of more egalitarian community that we want to try to become, where somebody who lives in Indian land and commutes in for work doesn't have to worry about staying in the city for another 2 hours instead of going home to be with their family just to come to a deacon meeting. Yeah. That's not going to work. And so I'm just wondering if there's like this hybrid where we'll come back and then we'll start doing things different, like maybe 1 month in, 1 month out, one congregational meeting together in, one meeting out, whether we'll be doing worship online and in person. on a regular basis, a combination of the two, and giving people more options of access. It's really an accessibility question to me at this point now. So I don't know what your thoughts are about accessibility related to technology, but I'm sure you've studied some of that.
Oh yeah, I as far as the meetings go, I've been there's no way I'm going back to certain meetings ever face to face again. They were going to have to figure out, there needs to be a little like Anita head in the meeting so I can participate with the people who are there, right, on a screen. Yeah, that's we don't, I don't think we have the technology yet, but I think maybe that will be what it is, so that people who are physical can easily see the people who are participating virtually some way. That I'm hoping that's a new technology that comes up. That would be fantastic. But no, it shouldn't. I think all of us are sitting around going, I want to participate. I don't want to drive 1 hour. I don't have to drive 1 hour. Figure this out. I still want to be part of this group. Yeah.
And
we have to demand that change.
Yeah. That's the future of church. That's the future of school. Hi, Lucy. That's the future of all of us who are working in group settings. So I think we need to lean into that in our upcoming seasons.
Yeah, that sounds good. I agree. Yes.
Anita, thanks so much for being on. It has been great to talk with you. It's been good to talk with you in your professional side, which I feel like we don't get to talk to you about that very often.
No, I do. It's funny. I think I let my home life into my work all the time. I'm really open about, modeling to my students that you can be a parent or mother actually, and have children. But I don't really go in and talk about all my, research stuff at church and stuff. It's kind of boring. It'd be odd at a dinner party. Well, actually,
yeah. Well,
what you're experiencing right now is intensity.
We could have a whhole podcast on entitativity, and that would be a great word.
I have actually, in my meeting this morning, I made this for them so they would know how to spell it.
Good. I need to practice. That. It's definitely it trips me up a little bit. So
yes, it's a hard word. Everybody does. That's why I held it up. I gave him a little example.
It's almost as hard as Hupomoné.
Yeah, I had to look. All right, so wait a minute. Do you see that one I looked up too? The meaning of that? What the heck is that? Like, they want me to talk about patience? Are they insane? I am not patient. That's what they're afraid. Like, Anita, you seem so patient. Like, when? Who? Why?
All of our patience is being stretched right now.
Yes, it is. Thank you for joining us. We are so happy about this episode. I'm sure that it's going to be something that really can reach people, and I hope. Work is not boring. It's quite fascinating. So thank you.
Fascinating. Thanks, Anita.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much. Thank you guys for asking me. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.